Welcome to an Echoes of the Past channel. I'm Frederick II, who went down in history as the Great, King of Prussia, warlord, philosopher, and patron of the arts. Today, I'll tell you the story of how I turned a small North German kingdom into a European power. I am Frederick, and I was born on January 24, 1712, in Berlin as Crown Prince of Prussia. My childhood life was hell. My father, Frederick William I, was a military fanatic who wanted to make me the perfect soldier. But I loved music, poetry, French literature, everything he considered soft. Imagine, at the age of 6, I got my first uniform and had to march like a soldier. My father beat me for every weakness. If he caught me playing the flute or reading French books, I was beaten with a stick. At the age of 18, I tried to escape to England with my friend Hans von Katte. I wanted freedom. I wanted to live the life I wanted. But we were caught. My father had me imprisoned in Kustrin Fortress and ordered me to watch Katte being executed. It was the worst trauma of my life. My best friend died because of me. That's when I realized that you can't fight your father directly. I learned to play his game. Outwardly a dutiful son, inwardly preparing for the day when I would rule alone. I spent 2 years as a clerk in Kustrin, learning the administration of the state. My father thought he had broken me. In fact, he hardened me. When I returned to court, I was a different man, cold, calculating, determined. After returning from Kustrin, I learned to be the perfect actor. Before my father, I played the role of the obedient military son, but secretly I studied philosophy, history, and military strategy. I corresponded with Voltaire, the greatest thinker of his time. In 1733, I had to marry Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Bevern. It was a political marriage, which I hated. My wife was nice, but boring. We never had children and lived practically apart. My real love was music and literature. I composed, wrote poetry, studied the works of ancient philosophers. At Rheinsberg Castle, I created a small court full of artists and thinkers. It was my refuge from my father's despotism. But I didn't forget the future. I secretly studied European politics, military tactics, economics. I knew that one day I would rule, and I wanted to be prepared. Prussia was a small kingdom among the great powers, Austria, France, Russia. To survive, we had to be smarter and stronger. In 1740, my father died. At the age of 28, I became King of Prussia. I was free at last. But freedom also meant great responsibility. No sooner was I seated on the throne than the opportunity I had dreamed of presented itself. Emperor Charles VI had died, and his daughter Maria Theresa had inherited the Austrian lands. Europe was about to go to war over the Austrian inheritance. Everyone expected the young King of Prussia to be cautious, but I did something unexpected. I invaded Austrian Silesia without declaring war. It was risky, but brilliant. Silesia was a rich, industrial territory that would have doubled the power of Prussia. Maria Theresa was shocked. The young, inexperienced ruler faced an attack from a neighbor she considered an ally, but I had no time for sentiment. Politics is a game where only the strongest survive. At the Battle of Mollwitz in April 1741, I won my first victory. I was not yet an experienced warrior. I even ran away from the battle when it seemed we were losing. But my generals won the battle. Silesia was mine. This war taught me 2 important lessons. Never underestimate the enemy, and always have a plan B ready. Maria Theresa proved to be a tenacious opponent. Our battle was just beginning. The First Silesian Wars won me not only territory, but also the respect of Europe. Prussia was no longer a small North German kingdom. It had become a European power. Between the wars, I devoted myself to what I really enjoyed: reform and culture. I wanted to be an enlightened despot, a king who ruled by reason, not tradition. I abolished torture, reformed the judiciary, introduced religious tolerance. Catholics, Protestants, and Jews could live in Prussia. I said, in my kingdom, everyone can go to heaven in his own way. I invited Voltaire to my court. He was my intellectual hero. For 3 years we discussed philosophy, literature, politics. Unfortunately, our friendship ended in a quarrel. Two egotists just couldn't stand each other. I founded the Berlin Academy of Sciences, built palaces, supported the arts. I composed myself. My flute concertos are still played today. I wanted Berlin to rival Paris and Vienna, but I paid most attention to the army. I inherited 80,000 soldiers from my father, and I increased it to 150,000. The Prussian army became the most disciplined and efficient in Europe. It was said that Prussia is not a state with an army, but an army with a state. I knew that peace was just a break between wars. Maria Theresa never forgot the loss of Silesia. In 1756, almost all of Europe was united against me. Austria, France, Russia, Sweden, all wanted to destroy the Prussian usurper. Only England gave me financial support. It was like David against Goliath, but I had the better sling. I started with a preemptive attack on Saxony. Speed and surprise were my weapons. While the enemy argued, I acted. At the Battle of Rossbach, I defeated the French and Austrians. At the Battle of Leuthen, I destroyed the Austrian army. But the war lasted 7 years, and it was a hell of a war. 3 times I was on the verge of defeat. The Russians burned Berlin. The Austrians took Silesia. In the worst moments, I carried poison in my pocket. I would rather die than surrender. My army was reduced from 150,000 to 60,000 men. Prussia was exhausted. I was on the verge of collapse. But I never surrendered. I said to my generals, "Dogs, do you want to live forever?" The miracle came in 1762. Tsarina Elizabeth died, and the new Tsar Peter III, my admirer, made peace with me. The coalition broke up. Prussia survived. I emerged from the war as the Great, one of the greatest warriors in history. After the 7 Years' War, Prussia was in ruins. Cities burned, villages abandoned, the treasury empty. But I saw an opportunity to rebuild the kingdom to my liking. First, I rebuilt the army. Without a strong army, our neighbors would tear us apart like wolves. Then I set about economic reforms. I encouraged manufactures, canal building, draining the swamps. Every bit of land had to be productive. I brought thousands of colonists to Prussia, Germans, French, Poles. I said, I don't need subjects, I need citizens. I founded hundreds of new villages, expanded education, reformed taxes. My day started at 4 in the morning. Correspondence, audiences, military parades, building inspections. I was the first servant of the state, as I called myself. I ruled with an iron hand, but for the good of the country. Culturally, I wanted Prussia to rival France. I built palaces, theaters, libraries. I wrote the history of my wars, composed music, corresponded with the greatest thinkers of Europe. But the greatest triumph was yet to come. In 1772, an opportunity presented itself that I could not refuse. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was the sick man of Europe. Weak government, anarchy of the nobility, religious conflicts. Austria and Russia were about to divide Polish territory. But I had a better idea. Why not divide it among all 3? It was my diplomatic masterpiece. I convinced Tsarina Catherine II and Empress Maria Theresa that it was better to divide Poland peacefully than to fight over it. The first partition of Poland in 1772 brought me West Prussia. I finally united my scattered lands. Maria Theresa is said to have cried at the signing and said, "The more I think about it, the more ashamed I am." But she signed. Politics is not for the weak of character. I felt no regret. I had gained strategically important territory for Prussia. The new province was poorly administered by the Poles. I reorganized it according to the Prussian model: German colonists, efficient administration, economic development. Within 10 years, West Prussia was the most prosperous part of my lands. My critics said I was a cynic without morals. But I was a realist. Only those who can combine strength with cleverness survive in politics. Poland would have fallen apart anyway. I just made sure Prussia benefited. In the last years of my life, I retreated to my beloved palace of Sanssouci. Carefree. That was the name of my refuge from the world. But my worries never left me. Prussia was strong, but I was getting old and had no son. My heir was my nephew, Frederick William II, a weak, irresponsible young man. I worried that my life's work might be destroyed by an incompetent successor. But what could I do? The fate of the kingdom was in the hands of the gods. For the last 20 years I had lived as a hermit. I wore shabby uniforms, ate simple food, slept on a hard bed. My companions were dogs, more loyal than men. My favorite was Biche the greyhound, who accompanied me everywhere. I was always composing, writing, reading. I finished my memoirs, The History of Prussia, Philosophical Reflections. I wanted to leave my descendants not only a strong kingdom, but also an intellectual heritage. On August 17, 1786, I died at the age of 74. My last words were, "I am tired of life." I reigned for 46 years and made a small kingdom into a European power. I was buried, as I wished, next to my beloved dogs in Sanssouci. No pomp and ceremony, just the simple grave of a great king. My life was a struggle against my father, against my enemies, against fate. From Little Prussia, I created a power that later united Germany. I was a warrior, a philosopher, a reformer, and a tyrant. Some call me the Great, others the cynical despot. The truth is somewhere in between. I was a product of my time, a time when power determined the survival of states. I did what I thought necessary for my kingdom. Don't forget to subscribe to an Echo of the Past channel and give a like if you're interested in my story. History is full of fascinating individuals who have shaped our world. The past whispers, the future listens.